darlings. This is Melissa, your Learning Technologies trainer. Thanks for stopping by to engage in this recording of the CPS Adobe Creative Institute Part 2. This video series is a special opportunity for CPS teachers to become a certified Adobe Creative Educator. Now, this is a create as you learn opportunity. So details on creating your portfolio for this certification can be found throughout the video series. Once you've completed the 4 sessions and your portfolio is ready, you will attend a live badging event where you will receive your official Adobe Creative Educator badge. Details on badging events can be found down in the description box.
All right. So I met most of you a few weeks ago at on the PD day, and if I didn't, that means that I probably was with you last week for the makeup session. So just to recap, what we did when we were together was the first of 4 parts of what we call our Adobe Creativity Institute. And that first session was focused on creative tools. So we actually took a look at Adobe Express, and we started to build our portfolio by doing 3 things: taking a look at graphics, video, and then page within Adobe Express. But like I said to you when I was with you, that was going to be the most tools heavy portion of our work together. So the remaining 3 sessions are really going to be focused on, best pedagogical practices and improving student learning outcomes through this idea of creativity in the classroom. So today, this is actually my favorite session. So this is our creative process session. And we're going to be taking a look at, okay, we've established the fact that creativity is important. How do we now get it going in our classrooms? What could that look like? The next session, next Thursday, we'll be taking a look at creative assessment. And then finally, that 4th session, we'll be taking a look at creativity in the classroom. What is the difference between creative thinking, creative expression, reflection? What does that look like in every classroom at every grade level? And then when we conclude that 4th session, you will all submit your portfolios of work in order to obtain Adobe Creative Educator Level 1 and Level 2 status. And that will happen in the moment. Like, you will fill out the form and you will see confetti on your screen and the badges will show up in your email. It will all happen right then and there. Moving forward, what I had also spoken to you about was this idea of creating Adobe district leaders. So one of the things we are looking to do is start to build a cohort of educators within certain districts. And as I mentioned to you, I think when I was there, Cincinnati is one of my 4 target districts that I'm doing work with this quarter. So my goal is to kind of put together a cohort of folks that I can meet with once a month, do additional training with you, answer problems of practice, figure out how to support the work you're doing. But also, we want to, I know there's a lot of work that gets put on teachers where it's like, oh, and you expect us to do this work for free, right? So when you report back trainings and stuff that you do with us, you'll earn points toward our swag store, which you can order whatever swag you want as kind of our thank you for being part of our broader community. And there'll be other opportunities that come with that as well. I will probably send an email out after this session or before the next one. Debbie, are you tracking emails? You know what? I'm going to reach out to you to get the email list for everyone that we've done the part 1 with, because I realized that people who can watch the recording for part 2, and that might actually be a good opportunity to kind of just share everything I just said in an email.
Yep, but that works.
As Debbie mentioned, the goal, so we're meeting each of the next 3 weeks on Thursday. That next Thursday, I think, is March 2nd. I know there's a training day on March 3rd. If you're interested in doing that training on March 3rd, we planned a 5th session on March 2nd. So you would, I guess, coordinate with Debbie to help lead those trainings. But the March 2nd, the day before, would actually be that first opportunity for me to meet with you to kind of provide additional resources and support and kind of model how I would do an intro training for a tool like Express and exemplars and stuff like that. So I think that was all the groundwork laying I needed to do for today. Any questions before we jump into today's session? All right, no questions. Debbie, are you going to be monitoring the chat?
I most definitely can do that for you, Jesse. Absolutely.
Oh, and you get paid presenter hours for it just like any other PD day too. So look, there's a whole bonus I didn't even get to throw in from Adobe that just got thrown in for you. So cool. All right. I'm going to drop into the chat. And Melissa, thank you for helping with the chat. I want to tell you, Melissa inspired me because I shared with you when I was showing you the professional resources online that I did a session on formative assessment, like a lightning learning course, a 30-minute lightning learning course. They were recruiting internally to have someone do a math one. And I was like, you know what? I'm stepping up because I feel like Melissa threw down the gauntlet last week with me and was calling out my street cred, my math teacher street cred. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go produce a course on the creativity in the math classroom since I was challenged. Thank you, Melissa. So when you see it, just know that was because of you. I stepped up to that because of you. So I threw in the page for today. We're going to be focused on creative process. So I'm going to share my screen. Oh, wow. It has been a long time since I have been in, since I have been here. Okay, cool.
We have faith in you, Jesse. You got this.
Figure it out. So I'm in creative process. You'll see it brings us to an Express page. Similar to last time, we had one for creative tools. This is our page for creative process. And what I would like you to do is actually, before we open up that, can you see or I have to switch tabs. Okay, just did it. We're good. So as I mentioned last time, as I started to kind of prep you for this session, this is the one where I'm going to put you to work. So there's going to be a lot of doing in this one. So our goal for this session is helping students kind of know what they should do and why they should do it. We focused on the tools last time. Now we're focusing on the process. So talking about that idea of like productive struggle and really starting that assessment conversation now, right? Because that's part of modeling the process. So we're going to dive into assessment really deep in the next session. But in this session, we're going to introduce some of those concepts and start talking about them. So our schedule is roughly going to look like this. We're going to spend a few minutes defining. And then again, that process is going to happen over a 45-minute span. So what I'm going to be doing is essentially, to give you a sneak preview, taking a lesson that we would have traditionally considered to be creative or an activity that we would have given our students and kind of flipping it on its head. I want to reimagine that with you and walk you through this lesson where you are the students and I will be the teacher. And then we will talk about at the end of that process, how did that feel? What did that look like? And could this amplify learning in my classroom? And then at the end, we will add our asset to our portfolio from last time. But really, when we talk about creativity in the classroom, it's, again, I want to make sure I keep saying this because I don't want this to get lost in the grand scheme of things, but nobody's saying that the work you're not already doing in the classroom or that your teachers are not already doing is not good work. It's simply, how do we take the work we're already doing and provide additional opportunities for students to be creative, regardless of subject area, regardless of grade level. And so we're going to talk about that during the fourth session, creativity in the classroom. But some of those ideas are under number one here of how do we have students look at content in a deeper way? And it could be things like changing perspectives, imagining different outcomes, identifying problems as part of their work. I'm actually doing a keynote this weekend on kind of, you saw a very tiny version of it, but really talking about how has artificial intelligence kind of changed the way we need to think about the types of assessments we give and, you know, how we can kind of magnify learning as a result of this. But more importantly, something I always talk about is finding opportunities for students to have voice, choice, and agency over the work they do. So this is something you're going to see now throughout this work. Now take a look at this graphic I have on the screen. So this is an assignment I might give after doing a story where, you know, we read Three Little Pigs and I might say, you know, create a book title with a headline of the story of the Three Little Pigs from one character's perspective, then create an Adobe Express graphic for that cover, which includes a title, image, and subtitle. And you can see our example right here. Would it be fair to say this is an activity that we might consider to be creative? If you don't want to say something, you can just put it in the chat, or I will just take your silence as agreement, in which case then it will go exactly the way I'm hoping it will go. Perfect. So we are all in agreement. This is something that might be a creative lesson that we might do. Now, the problem is, through the typical student experience, it looks like this. Not in every case, but in most cases, students are wondering, not even how do I get an A, but why did I get the grade I got, right? Or is this good enough?
Jesse, can we pause just a second?
Yeah.
We have a hand raised, and then David said he was unable to see the presentation, but I do see it. Is anyone else having issues with viewing Jesse's screen?
Can you see my screen?
Yeah, I can see it. So that was my question, but I can see it now. So
okay,
I'm good.
David, are you good? David Valentine, since I have three of you in here.
Sorry, I still don't see a screen, but I'm not.
I
was looking in all the.
Sharing, and I'm going to reshare, and hopefully that will fix the issue.
David, are you on your phone or on your laptop?
I'm on my laptop. We have parent-teacher conference, so I'm on my laptop.
Are you full screen or are you?
Yeah, I'm full screen.
Interesting.
And I don't even see his little present. Usually, I could see his presentation like as one of the members, but now I'm seeing it. Now I'm seeing it.
All right, perfect. You know what? Instead of doing a tab, I'm just going to do whole screen. Oops. Wait. Okay, perfect. So this is that typical student experience we talked about. Now, one of the things we sometimes do, but that helps in terms of that framing when we do these creative activities, is defining the steps of a project, right? So here you see creating a checklist. So each step should be specific, clear, and quantifiable. And an example would be write down at least 5 characters from the Three Little Pigs, brainstorm 5 ideas of headlines from your perspectives, get feedbacks from peers, then choose one of those ideas and create 3 drafts, get feedback from peers, make improvements, and then complete your project. Spoiler alert, that's what you're going to be doing this session, but not on the Three Little Pigs. Although I did find it interesting. It says write down at least 5 characters from the Three Little Pigs, and I was like, wait a minute, is it only the 3 little pigs and the wolf? But apparently the mom was there. Most embarrassingly for me, I once did this workshop in New York where I live, and my best friend happened to be in the session, and he raised his hand, and he was like, I was like, write down at least 5 characters from the 3 little pigs, and he raised his hand, and he was being serious. He's like, is that the one with the porridge? And I'm like, no, that was the 3 bears. That's a different story, but I guess people get confused on that. I don't know.
We all have our moments.
Exactly. So when we move to a model like this, we start to transition from that typical student experience to the supportive student experience. And this is something we're going to frame over the next 3 sessions as we talk about what the typical student experience looks like versus the supportive student experience. And under the supportive student experience, students know how to do the project well, they know what they need to do to keep improving and growing, and they understand why they got the grade they got, which ties in with assessment, which we're going to be taking a look at. Before we kind of jump in and get working, I did want to just add this one more piece where we start simple with any new tool. Again, another thing you'll hear me say constantly is, even though I do work for Adobe, and even though I'm technically work for a tools company, we know that it's not about the tool, right? But whenever we are introducing students to a tool, we don't want to throw the kitchen sink at them, right? So we're only going to focus on a few features. Gradually, as they practice, they will get more comfortable, and ultimately, the goal is that to not be focused on the tool as we develop assignments or assessments, but focus on the learning outcomes and have the students select the tool. So here's what we are going to do. We are going to get creating. What I would like you to do is, if we go back to that creative process webpage, that was the link I put in the chat before, you will see there's a creative process workbook here. If I click on the creative process workbook, it's going to ask me to create a copy of this for myself. I would like you to do that, and it will open up this workbook. So everyone will have their own copy of this workbook.
Jesse, can I interject for just a quick moment? We had a question in the chat about sharing the copy of your presentation, not this workflow. I didn't know if you'd be willing to provide a PDF copy of what you've been presenting.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
I can absolutely do that.
Thank you.
That will be particularly, you know, it's so funny. That will be particularly useful for the fourth one because we're constantly having people taking pictures. But you're right. I don't know why anyone hasn't asked for a PDF of it. That would make more sense. But okay, let's do it. So making sure everyone has this copy open of this workflow document. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually start off the way we would start a lesson with our students. So we wouldn't just basically, or we shouldn't, give them the lesson and throw them in, right? The work, and again, the cool part is one of the reasons we want you to have this workflow is you can always take this and tweak this and redesign it for your own lessons, but we want you to have like an exemplar, like a model of how we would go about doing this. Now, your challenge for this activity that we're going to do is you're going to be creating a book cover design in Adobe Express for what it was like to teach during the pandemic. If you're thinking we've received a lot of crazy funny ones, we have. So this tends to be one that resonates with people because people tend to have strong feelings of what it was like to teach during the pandemic.
This could be a very amusing Twitter feed that you guys could have on your hands.
So as you can imagine, one of my, you know, I work directly with New York City. I actually keep every single one I get because they are so funny because they do not hold back. It is funny. But anyway, your book cover will include a title, a subtitle, a main image, you know, the graphic, and the author's name. It should be designed in Adobe Express, and the image or graphic should be related to the title. Here's the thing. Too often we just throw kids right into, here's the assignment, go do. We don't often level set. So a couple ways that we're going to level set today is, first I want to take a look at this rubric. You will notice this looks a little different than traditional rubrics that we often use because this is what we call a 1-point rubric. And I know you might be like, wait a minute, how could it be 1 point if I see 1 through 4 on there? And that's because the 1 through 4 that we are actually talking about here is not the it's not the points, it's the number of criteria. So for instance, I'm guilty of this as well. I'm an adjunct professor, and a lot of times when I assign work, up until like a semester ago when I was assigning work, I would do it in a way where I was like trying to fill spots in my rubric. So I would say, here's 1 through 4. You get a 1 if you do this, a 2 if you do that, like a 2 if you do 2 to 3 things, but a 3 if you do 3 to 4 things. And ultimately, as I reflect on that practice, what I realize is it does not matter whether they did 2 to 3 or 3 to 4 because that does not tell me anything about the learning. So in a 1-point rubric, we have criteria, and as we evaluate it, we're evaluating it for areas for improvement and areas that exceed expectation. The 1 through 4 we can use to kind of identify whether the learning goal was met or not met, but for the rest of this session, we're actually not going to be using the 1 through 4, but I wanted to just model for you. We'll be talking more about 1-point rubrics during next week. But what I want to do with you as a group right now is, and I would do this with my class, is before we get started on the work, let's talk through some exemplars as a class. I don't want to say exemplars, let's examples. And we could talk about whether, and let's evaluate them according to the rubric, because we want students to help level set collectively as a class before we dive into the work. So here is cover number 1, and you can see our rubric over on the right. Feel free to unmute if you have something, you know, but what I'm looking for here are areas for improvement or areas that exceed expectations for this first cover example. So notice we have 2 sets of criteria, the cover concept and the design. Any areas for improvement or areas that exceed expectations on either of these. I'm sorry, in this graphic, but from either of those criteria.
Here we go. There's kind of no subtitle nor author on that.
So, perfect. I don't see an author name. I've heard people say Education Sector 2021 could be a subtitle, but because it's not clear, that's an area for improvement, right? So for sure, cover concept, those 2 things are things that I would note under areas for improvement. Anything else from other from either cover concept or design? Anything about the image itself? Do we feel like the image covers the topic of teaching during a pandemic?
It doesn't necessarily like represent the pandemic in any way.
Right. I mean, I kind of, things I've heard before, like the hand could be coming out of the laptop screen and that could be it. But again, not clear. So that's an area we could put under improvement. Anything with the design that's either area for improvement or area that exceeds expectations?
Excuse me. I like the electronic hand. It's kind of cold looking. It's a little, the colors are kind of cold. It's kind of it's not warm and soft. So it's almost like, even though you're connecting with the kids online, you don't have that experience, like that personal experience.
Okay, great. So that's the first example. Let's take a look at the next one. What do we think about this one? Thoughts on either the cover concept or the design?
Jesse, can I ask you a question? Not necessarily about this one particularly,
Sure.
but just about the process. I feel like some of the comments that we were saying are personal, like I don't like the graphic, or I don't think that it applies to the pandemic. However, as a creative exercise, it's what the author feels when they think about the pandemic. So like, I don't think that this one, for example, necessarily feels how I would feel in the pandemic. So like, how can we just be careful of that?
So again, I think you actually hit on something really good where you're personalizing it, right? Ultimately, that's why you'll notice when we gave the instructions, we're saying you get multiple sets of feedback from multiple people, right? Because in creative works, we know that a lot of this is going to be personal and subjective, right? So ultimately, it's what we're talking about are potential areas for improvement and areas that exceed expectations. So ultimately, it's to provide perspective. So you're right, there is some balancing and some framing depending on your grade level, right? So at a high, in high school, we may not have to provide that framing as much as we would for elementary students, just so that there's no personal feelings taken into account. But ultimately, that's why we're saying you don't just go to one person to get feedback. We want you to, in a short period of time, try to collect feedback from multiple people. And then ultimately, that doesn't mean you have to take that into account. But here's where something may help. So anyone want to give me feedback on this one in particular? Because this one, I think, actually feeds into something where we could have helpful, constructive feedback as opposed to something which could be taken personally.
I feel like the colors on the image pop more than the colors of the title of the font and whatnot. So like I have to, and maybe it's just my aging eyes, like I have to really concentrate on the title and the subtitle, which I love the subtitle, but it's like really small and at the bottom. And so like the subtitle is what draws me in, but it's like the last thing I looked at.
So this is actually a good piece of objective feedback. The subtitle and the title, I mean the author's name, are too small. That is not even like potentially offensive feedback. That is actually true. It is way too small in relation. And I think as multiple people share it, that becomes an area for improvement. To answer, to really go back to the question, I think let's revisit this once we're done with the activity, because I think it'll kind of become clear why we even potentially do something that could hurt feelings, because ultimately we're not trying to hurt feelings, but ultimately if the end product is, as a result of the process, is better than if we had just assigned the activity in the first place and everyone feels really good about what they came up with through the result of constructive feedback, then we probably did the right thing, right? So let's talk. So, okay, we said for cover concept here, name and subtitle needs to be made bigger. Anything related to design? Does this design image speak pandemic teaching to you?
I think for me, only in a really abstract way, because since it's crumpled up paper that's stained, and even maybe I'm really giving the author some credit here. Maybe the light blue washed out font is supposed to be like the old ways are tossed aside.
It could represent the struggle. Like I see that as like survival. My coffee's everywhere. The name tag though, I'm a little lost on.
Right, but I'm saying that's really good design feedback, because also I think even with the intentionality of like the font choice as being like reflective, like, oh wow, I didn't even realize that's what I was going for, necessarily. So I think that's really good feedback. Let's take a look at one more.
Before you move on, I like the blank name tag. Really, it was almost like, "Hello, my name is," and like nothing's there, nobody cares. I think it's kind of cool.
Oh wow, I for me, I was like, yeah, I definitely had a lot of like coffee stains all over paper. So for me, that piece of it definitely, kind of reflected the scatteredness sometimes of trying to like keep myself organized during the pandemic. But all good feedback. Let's take a look at this last one. What do we think about this one? Cover concept or design?
Design is a bit busy.
We've gotten that feedback before, especially the two. People seem to be really bothered for some reason by the icons up at the top, like not understanding necessarily why they're there, but
Yeah, they seem like an afterthought.
Right. Like I had space, so I added these two things in. Other feedback.
It feels a little Snapchatty, like a cool image with some Snapchat stuff.
Okay. Subtitle. I'm not sure if hashtag stay home is meant as the subtitle or just like another, like you mentioned, the Snapchat thing. It's just something I threw on the image, like, as an access point. What about that design? The picture of the Mr. Peanutty person pulling something out of the head. I've heard good and bad on that as a concept. So I'm just curious to see how that resonates in Cincinnati.
It doesn't, like, I think it fits with the title. I agree with some of the pieces mentioned in the chat. Like if the entire background had been white and the two icons weren't at the top, maybe it'd feel like a more solid image, maybe.
Okay, cool. So yeah, I've heard, like I said, varying pieces of feedback on that particular one. But what we're going to do is, if you go to the next slide, Laura, me too. I actually felt weird about the font also. So here's what we're going to do for this next piece. If you go to the next slide, you're going to see it says create brainstorming. So we have, as a class now, kind of gone through some exemplars together, set some groundwork for kind of like what we like, what we don't like, what we're looking for. So our expectations should be kind of clear. What we're going to do now is I'm going to give you, let's see how much time we have. Okay, 5 minutes. We're going to have 5 minutes to brainstorm 5 titles and subtitles for your book cover on the pandemic. Okay, so my one thing I will say, you will keep hearing me say this, is we're not going to be precious. It's literally title, subtitle, move on to the next one. Title, subtitle, move on to the next one. Don't hover too much. We're just trying to spit them out. So I'm going to set the timer for 5 minutes.
Are we doing this in the slideshow or on paper?
Yeah, you should do it so you could do it in the workbook. If you are like, I don't want to do the workbook, I want to work on paper, however you want. But ultimately, what's going to happen, next step, just so you know where we're going, that might help you kind of determine that, is we are going to do our first round of feedback after this. So what you're going to be asked to do is copy those. You probably want them typed into, if we were in person, I would have you circulate around the room and kind of share ideas with a few people and get the feedback. Since we're doing this virtually, I'm going to give you a Padlet link. You're going to paste them in, and then we're going to have a few minutes for you to kind of go to people's and add a couple of comments on what you like and don't like. All right, so go.
2 weeks then.
Okay, like 1 minute left.
This is not enough time.
That's why, but that's why we're gonna be. That's why I warned you that we're gonna work you this time. But again, if you don't get all 5, we're not kicking you out. It's fine. We're all gonna do as much as we could do over the 5 minutes. But this is also practice for like kind of iterating and like iterating quickly. Okay. Was anyone able to get 5 titles and subtitles? Okay, 4. 4. Okay, good. We got 4. 3. All right, 2. 1. Okay, what are we doing here? What's happening? Okay, so good. Everyone has their own flavor of, or got their own number. That's cool. Again, we're setting this as a goal, but ultimately, if people don't get there, that's okay. It's a creative process. What we're going to do now is I'm going to put a link into the chat. Again, this is better when we do it in person, but we're gonna make do with online. What I would like you to do is copy and paste those. You're gonna put them into this Padlet and just spend a couple minutes. Set a goal of like trying to give feedback to 2 or 3 people, like comments, which one you like. Maybe I like the subtitle and I don't like. Maybe I like the subtitle but not the title. Maybe I like the title with a different subtitle that they put up there. But the goal for this next few minutes is going to be to come out of the next like 4 to 5 minutes with, I now have the title and subtitle that I'm going to move forward with for my pandemic book. All right. So that's going to be the goal. Here is the Padlet. So again, you can add a post in the lower right-hand corner by hitting the plus. That should be our goal. We're just going to hit plus, paste them in, and then just click go, add some feedback, and we'll do it that way. Perfect. I'm going to put.
Do you want us to add all of ours on one or add 5 different ones?
If you add all in one, this way someone could add comments to, like, I like the second one. It's going to be the quickest virtually to do it that way, for sure. I hear my children yelling about who's going to take the dog out, which means there's definitely about to be an accident in the kitchen. So they will not be able to self-figure this out. Okay, I'm going to set timer for 4 minutes. I know it's not a lot of time, but okay. Laura, I rarely see this, but I really like that you kind of had a visual for what the image is going to be too, or at least have some context for it. That's going to be really helpful in the next step, but it just helps me to contextualize. That's awesome. We didn't ask for it, but it's definitely helpful. All right. I see everyone putting comments here. Awesome. Thank you. If you can, try to provide feedback to someone who might not have gotten it already. If you see there's one without comments.
Can you, where are we putting the comments?
So right underneath the titles and stuff that are there,
Oh,
you'll
okay.
see to add comment right underneath.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay, we'll take another minute. Let everyone take a look at their feedback.
Not gonna lie, after reading some of these, I would buy several of these books, but y'all are making me really doubt my creative title making abilities because some of these are awesome.
So
I'd like to piggyback on that, Debbie. I feel even more of a math person at this moment than I ever have.
if you think this is good, we haven't even started creating yet. Wait till you see every session I've ever done of these. The book covers come out so awesome. I'm always so excited to. So you're going to see at the end, we're going to have you add them to the portfolio, but we're also going to have you put them in a Padlet so we can see all of your book covers together. So there will be a chance for us to see what everyone did, and I'm sure it's going to be awesome. So if you haven't, just look over the comment. If you haven't looked over the comments that you received, do that now. And what I'm going to do is I'm just logging into Express right now. Here we go. Okay, so look over your feedback. What you should be doing right now is looking over the feedback that you received and then kind of settling on one of your ideas that you're going to move forward with, because we're going to get into prototyping your actual book cover. So what I want to do is I'm going to share my screen really quickly. Let me go back here, share screen. Okay. Why am I not seeing? Oh, here we go. Okay. Okay. I am now presenting my screen, and here we go. So I'm in Adobe Express. You should remember this view, and hopefully remember how to log into Adobe Express. Troubleshoot with you in a few. How do we get started on this? On doing our book cover. And so what I can do as a starting point, remember, one of the big focuses we had on Adobe Express was the fact that I don't have to start out with something new. I can remix. So I'm actually going to search in Adobe Express for book covers. And what I want to do is I'm going to look for one that I think could be a good starting point for me. Let's look. Again, I have almost 1,200 to choose from, so that's going to be, I'm going to pick this one. And I'm going to start with it. And what I want to do here is I'm going to quickly mock up my book cover. Let's change this to, actually, I'll change the author name to Jesse Lubinsky. And I'm just going to quickly add a shape. And maybe I want it to match the color that's up there. So I'll look at what I have for the existing palette. And I will change it to, yes, okay. Okay, so my first graphic is Jesse didn't shower, a pandemic teaching story. Now, what I'm going to ask you to do is, remember, we said we were going to make several iterations of this. So the question is how, like, if I'm only giving you 10 minutes to make 3 different book covers, that's going to be a lot to do. Well, down here at the bottom, you'll notice that I have the ability to, graphics are multi-page. So I can add a page or I can duplicate the page. So what I'm going to do my next iteration is I'm not going to start a whole new graphic from scratch, even though I can. I'm going to duplicate the page. And then what I want to do for this one is I'm actually going to just change the graphic. I'll pick a different shower image. Oops. And I'll change the color for that one. And what I'm going to do for this one is, remember I showed when we were together how I can change colors on the whole, right? And teaching during the pandemic made me very sad. So I'm going to pick a sad color palette. And maybe I want to change my title. Actually, I don't want to change the title. I'll leave it, but I think it was supposed to be Jesse forgot to shower because he was so busy teaching. Okay, so notice here I have a view all pages. There's my first 2 iterations side by side. And maybe for the third one, I'll create a whole new one. But I just wanted you to show it's very easy to create one, duplicate it, and then change the colors or graphics without having to start new. So what I'm going to be asking you to do is create 3 iterations of your book cover. And I'm going to give you like 12 minutes to do that. All right, so we're going to give you 12 minutes right now to create 3 iterations of your cover. Remember, if you don't get to 3 and you get to 2, we're not going to kick you off the call, right? You're still safe with us. So 12 minutes to log into Express, and then create those book covers. Any questions?
Yeah, so I'm staring at the main Express thing, and I glanced away when you searched for book covers. I don't see a search thing choice on this main page.
Are you at the home page for Express? Remember, if we're logged into Express, we can always click in the upper left-hand corner to get to the home page.
All
And
right,
if you're on the home page, you should see a screen up at the top. I'll share one more time. So, oops, that's not the window. Hold on. So if I go to home page on Adobe Express, I have search all templates up here. And that's where I search.
The page that I'm on doesn't look like yours where it says create new project. It just says Adobe Express and has custom size flyer, logo, banner across the middle.
Does it say over here like Instagram story, Instagram post, something like that?
There's a box if I scroll down that says edit images and videos on the go.
I'm wondering if you're logged into the if it for some reason signed you in through the not okay, do me a favor, in the upper right hand corner where you have, see where I have the icon here and I click down and it says Adobe Express Premium.
Okay, hold on. I've got a thing that says my account and then it says welcome back, David. Do I click on view account to see if that?
Yes. So we were looking to make sure it says Express Premium. I'm wondering if you're logged into not the premium version for some reason.
It says Adobe for Enterprise, Cincinnati Public Schools.
Oh, so then it should be okay. What about if you click on the icon up here in the upper left-hand corner?
Upper left-hand corner that says Adobe account? No, that's not it.
Oh, wait, are you in Creative Cloud?
Is that where I'm at somehow?
Express. So is the website you're on express.adobe.com?
Says account.adobe.com, yes.
So type in, I'm going to put this link in the chat. Click on this link.
Thank you.
No problem. Stand by. Again, this is the fun part of being in Adobe where there's like a million different products and things.
Okay. There we go.
Perfect.
Thank you.
No problem.
And when you did your search, you just searched for book covers.
Just search for book covers, scroll down to the one I found, and just hit create from this template. And like I said, you can choose. My guess is, and again, this, if you're like, how is someone going to do this in 10 minutes, create 3 different covers? Guess what? With practice, you get there, right? And again, part of our challenge as educators, because I know how we are, is we can be a little bit precious and perfectionist with our work. So we're right now, remember, we're just prototyping. We're just mocking up. We do not need 3 finished graphics in 10 minutes. We just need enough to basically paint the picture of what we want to do. So we're not looking for 3 finished products here. We're just looking for enough to basically tell the story. Because what we're going to do, and this is the preview I'll give you, after our time is up, I'm going to have you screenshot that view that I showed you before where there was multiple pages of the graphic, or you'll upload them each individually. We'll get feedback again, another feedback cycle, and then we're going to settle on the one book cover version that we're going to really dive into, and that'll be the last thing we do. So that's the process. We have 2 feedback cycles here, one for the title and subtitle, the other for our initial designs, and then we're going to hone in on that final design that we want to work on.
Jesse, it looks like Dion's got a question.
I should be a little more vocal. That's one. My question is, I mean, anybody can answer this one. When he made the second book, did he just duplicate and then keep going, or what did he do?
Yes, he duplicated and then made some minor changes to color scheme and image.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, like 4 minutes left. I'm sure everyone's on design 3.
Okay, I'm really sorry I missed this, but where did you say to share it?
I'm going to show you in a few seconds. There's 30 seconds left, and then I'm going to model how we're going to get our picture.
I thought you all were already sharing. Never mind.
We're not sharing yet. We're good. We still have 28 seconds left. Okay, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. Okay. That was time. How many people got through 3 designs? 3? Wow, awesome.
You're funny. I don't know how
3
y'all.
iterations or 3 different designs?
He got through 3 iterations.
3 iterations? I'm on my 4th.
Oh my.
I dislike you, Rosemary.
No, I mean, I thought we had to do 3 designs, but I just changed colors of images.
Debbie, I want to hear
Overachiever.
What'd you say, Jesse?
It sounded like you were about to vent a little bit. I want to hear. It's okay. We're in a safe space.
Okay, so y'all, you guys know I'm extra. My team can attest to this. I am extra. I am picky, and
See, but
so
wait, that's the not following instructions part, right?
I know, but I can't that's who I am.
This was not the time for being precious, right? That's coming up. This was the
Jesse,
time
it's
to
the
do
makeup of me as a human being.
I know, but I get it. And again, we have all different learners. Elizabeth, this is the stressful time for most people during this training. So this, out of all 4 sessions, this 1 12-minute period tends to be the one that people get stressed out about. But here's the thing. I'm hoping that at the end, what you will feel is, ultimately, as a result of this process, that it's rushed intentionally, though, because the goal of this is to get you to work creatively but quickly. So we want you to iterate quickly. Same thing we would model in the design thinking process, right? It is about prototyping and iterating quickly, getting feedback, and then refining our work, as opposed to the traditional model of what we envision creativity being, which is I give you an assignment and you're just off kind of doing until it's done. That's not right. Ultimately, we recognize that we get better work from feedback. So Elizabeth, what I would say is I'm hoping at the end you can see the value in the process. And I will promise you that as you do this more, it gets easier, because that's your reaction is the same that some students in your class will have. And ultimately, that's the message that we give is the more you do it, the more comfortable you get. And it's really reframing from perfection to kind of prototyping. Okay. What I want to do to make sure I get us out on time. Tiffany, I don't know if you, I don't remember if you were in the room when I did the keynote, right? But this is the whole idea behind conceptual and experimental genius, right? Not everyone is going to be the type of person that actually works fast. So Melissa, this is an interesting point. It's counterintuitive to the creative process. I'm going to disagree. And here's why. Creativity isn't necessarily about the space and time. Ultimately, part of that is being able to iterate and prototype, because what you're going to be able to do now, once we go through this feedback cycle, is once you've landed on the design you want to spend your time on, you can do that. The reason, and I feel like I'm like giving you the kind of ending before, because this is what I hope happens organically, but this is a good point to have this conversation, is ultimately generally when we do this workshop, I'll ask you to reflect after this next piece. Is what you wound up with better than as a result of this process than what you would have wound up with had you simply been given the assignment and went off to do? And usually, because you have the feedback, your work product is better. So ultimately, it helps refine that creativity by going through everything we did today, going through modeling exemplars, going through the process of feedback on the titles and subtitles, going through the process of feedback of what we're about to do for this next iteration, and then finally giving you that time and space to create a finished product. Ultimately, all of this work can be done within one period if you're looking at a secondary schedule, right? So rather than me just give the work and be like, here, do the assignment and go, is it better if I'm including those feedback loops in the cycle? Let's actually do this cycle. So for this next one, I'm gonna just show you really quickly again, just in case you didn't see when I did it the first time. I'm gonna share my screen. Here we go. So just to go back into my projects for a second, this was the project. The way I was able to get the view of all of those different book covers next to each other was down here where it says view all pages. If you did it by adding a page or duplicating, you can get this. And then I'm not sure what type of device you're on, but you'll just basically, since I'm on my PC, I'm just going to use the snipping tool here and screenshot this image. But then this is what I would add into the Padlet. So what you're going to add into the Padlet right now is the side-by-sides of your graphics. If you didn't do it side-by-side, then just add them individually, and hopefully we can get to feedback on all of them.
The image quality is not stellar in gallery view, just saying.
100%. But again, remember, the goal is not finished product right now. The goal is just to get feedback on those designs. So if it were finished product, you'll see that we're going to do this differently. But for right now, all we're doing is sharing feedback on the drafts. So I'm going to put a Padlet into the chat right now, which will be for the drafts. And I just want to make sure I give you enough time. So I'm going to say we're definitely going to run out of time for this because it's easier when we do it in person. And unfortunately, I can't run overtime because of class. But what I will say is we're going to take 5 minutes right now. I think we can do 5 minutes.
Do you mind explaining one more time how to copy your 3 book covers?
Sure. I'm going to share one more time. So what I did, if you did it by adding pages, yeah, it looks like when you click on it, you get the bigger view. Okay, so really quickly, what I did, where did my Adobe Express go? Okay. So here's my graphic view. If you did it by adding pages instead of creating separate book covers each time, over on the right-hand side, it says View All Pages.
Yeah, I'm staring at all 3 of mine.
Is it showing all 3 next to each other? Oh, so what type of device are you on?
My teacher laptop.
But what kind of is it? A Chromebook, a MacBook, a laptop?
No, it's an HP.
Okay,
Chromebook.
so you should be able to.
David, go to your start menu.
There you go.
Scroll down, and you will see Snip and Sketch.
Oh, I see what you mean. Gotcha.
And then you should be able to save that graphic out.
And then hit New. You'll select it.
Now, again, we're doing this virtually, but if I were doing this in person, what I would be doing is instead of doing this virtually where I'm worrying about, snipping and putting into a Padlet, I would literally have the students be getting up and walking around to each other and showing that screen with all 3, getting that feedback and kind of moving around the room, right? So this is a way to get get students interacting and sharing. So unfortunately, because we're doing this virtually, it's a little more cumbersome, but what you should be doing now after you paste your image up there, go into that Padlet and just provide some feedback on another person's designs. Oh, I love that I just posted feedback on someone's image and someone else posted feedback at the exact same time, and it was the same feedback. So that's always nice. I feel validated. By the way, some of these are so good. That incessant beeping is me forgetting to turn off my alerts for Padlet. So it just means you guys are doing a good job. Let's see, can I silence alerts? Ah, yes, turn off all alerts. Thank you. Okay, one more minute.
Sorry, I just put mine in there. We're having parent-teacher conferences, so I have teachers or parents stop by, so I apologize. I was a little distracted.
By the way, that is dedication, not just to the teacher, not just to the parents, but to us. So thank you so much for doing this while you're in parent-teacher conferences. Ooh, this is a tough one. Okay. So what I'd like you to do is take a quick second, go and look at your own feedback that you received on your images. And what you're going to do is decide now, do you want, what is going to be the final image that you're going to kind of bring together as your final version? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give 8 minutes right now and spend that 8 minutes polishing up that version that you want to go with for your final product. So at the end of this 8 minutes, you're going to be done. You're going to have your book cover. And we're off. Okay. In the chat, just because we're a little short on time, but I want to make sure we all end on time. I want to respect your time as well. I'm going to put a Padlet for the final book cover. I'm actually going to put all this in the chat so you know why it's here. Melissa, if you want to just start all over, you do you. Right? That's what, right? Is that more in the creative spirit? We're going to do you right? There's no formula. We're going to do it the way we want to do it. If you're like, you know what, I got the feedback and I'm like kind of don't really love what I have so far, maybe take some of those elements of feedback and just start from scratch. Elizabeth and Tiffany, the way I kind of avoid that, just because I do this a lot, is instead of trying to do this on the main screen, when I'm looking at one, I click into it so that I'm doing it. And then when I close out, I can go back and find the one because I always have that exact problem. But yes, that feedback would have been totally more helpful before we did that. You might feel like you're done before the 8 minutes are up. If so, download your final graphic and add it to, we're going to add it in 2 places. We're going to add it to a final cover Padlet that I added here. And then we are also going to add the book covers to our portfolio. But to be honest, if we don't get to adding them to our portfolio till next time, I can live with that. That is not something that has to be done right this second. So we can totally do that next week. But definitely, if you have your book cover done, add it to that Padlet. This way we can walk away from today seeing all of our awesome book covers that you've created. Okay, 5 minutes left. Tiffany, I'm enjoying that apparently you have your own publishing house now. Okay, 3 minutes left. Remember, as you finish, download, and then you can click on that final book covers go here Padlet and throw them up there, and you're going to be able to see your final book cover collection.
So if we have multiple pages, we delete the ones we don't want before we.
Don't even delete them. You definitely want to keep them, but just when you download the image, just do it from the page that you want the graphic from.
Okay, thank you.
Can you review again after we download the one we want? Where should we place it?
There's a link in the chat to final book covers go here.
Okay, I see that. Thank you.
Yep, you just add it as a post right there. These are great. Oh, these are so good. Okay, 1 minute left. Okay. So what I'd like you to do is download your image, add it to your book, add it to the book covers Padlet. We're going to go, I will take us back into the portfolio at the beginning of the next session, and we can add it to that then. You could always do it now if you want, but I'd rather use the last few minutes to kind of just reflect before next time. But thoughts on the process? And again, remember, try to translate virtual to in-person, right? It would have been a lot more accountable talk and things if we were all in the room together. But what are some of your thoughts on the process?
I did appreciate the iterations, although I needed more time. I definitely saw improvement in quality in the product as future drafts were created.
The pressure worked for me. I think I could have done better with more time, like something that I would actually want to use. But also too, I think it was just good to like get it done. Now get it done a little different. Now get it done a little different. So that worked really well for me.
I agree with you, Rosemary, because I only have the kids 40 minutes once a week. So it's not like we can spend a whole hour doing one book cover. It's like we got to throw some stuff out there. Like, yeah, I get it.
What's funny too, David, is the process itself builds in other like mindsets and habits of mind we want students to have, right? So ultimately we talk about, 21st century learning, collaboration, things like that. We're modeling through the process. I want to thank all of you though, because the first time you do this especially, right, it's uncomfortable because it is not something. I think we all want to spend a lot of time crafting each book cover because we're not used to kind of doing things halfway or prototyping, but it's a skill. And so I guarantee you, if we were to do this again next session, we're not, but if we were to do it, you would feel more comfortable and kind of understand, okay, I'm only going to have this much time. So I really only am able to ration out X amount of time to be able to work on one iteration. The question that I said I would ask before, which I'll ask again, is, do you feel like what you wound up with at the end of this process is better than if, like David said, we had just basically been like spend 20 minutes or whatever on designing a book cover and then sharing that to a classroom or something?
Yeah, I think it is, because one of the things I find with my kids, I only see them 1 hour, 1 day a week. But if I let them just pick one thing and start working on it without a lot of brainstorming, in the end, they almost seem disappointed that they spent that much time on some of it. So it's better if they start out with 3 or 4 ideas, pick one and refine one.
Laura, Laura threw a comment in the chat about how she would have tweaked the process. So I will tell you, I've run these workshops with tech coaches, library media specialists, teacher leaders. And a few weeks ago, I did them with from a special education district in New York City, like art teachers. And we talked about how difficult it would be to run through this exact process with them. And so we talked about ways of how we can modify that process for them. And that's the beauty of it, right? All we're doing is modeling collectively as a whole here. But of course, the process can be tweaked and modified. But I think the key takeaways are, when we're talking about a creative process, we're talking about one that includes feedback cycles, that but allows for prototyping and iteration before coming up with a final product, so that it's not just I have to start kind of like I talked about when I was with all of you, that kind of blank page and I don't know where to start and I don't have a frame. But not only can you provide the frame, but you can kind of model the process, right? So I'll go back to where we started, which was having those exemplars and kind of going through them together as a group and kind of setting ground expectations for what we're looking for in creative works, and then working our way through the product. So like I said, I'm not going to flip screens to the portfolio and show you how to add that. I'll start off with that next time. But I guess this leads us into that next question, which is, okay, cool. We've gone through a creative process. How do we assess a creative work? And that's what we'll be focusing on next week. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for joining me again. I know that this is after school and some of you are at parent teacher conferences. We'll pick up with this next week. In the meantime, I will sync up with Debbie. I will get I will email you this week with a couple of links and things just for like information for if you are interested potentially. And again, no commitment, but I'm just trying to get a rough idea of who might be interested in continuing on with this work after the Institute. But again, I hope this was somewhat of an enjoyable experience. I know that it is not, I kind of put you out of your comfort zone maybe a little bit. But thank you so much, and I cannot wait to be with you all again next week. So have a great week, and I will see you next Thursday.